Hello there, and welcome to 10 more films and TV shows that either confused or frustrated me as an autistic person. And I do need to stress that finding films and TV shows frustrating or confusing isn't an autistic trait. This video is really just to give a space for autistic people to discuss film and TV because it's a common special interest, and it certainly is for me. So with that in mind, let's get started with number one. So number one, and this is with spoilers included, is The Breakfast Club. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are going to know why I'm a bit confused about this film. And yep, it's Alison's makeover. And I just don't understand the motivation for this character development. And I don't know about you, but I thought the character of Alison was just so interesting, and she really rocked that kind of old school art school style. It was a very indie style, and I just thought she looked great, and she was fully embracing her kind of eccentric self. And when we think about other John Hughes movies, they seem to really embrace kind of unique or eccentric characters. And I'm thinking of both Andy and Ducky in Pretty in Pink. And I don't know, I just couldn't understand the motivation in making her kind of conform to more conservative style beauty standards. So they took off her eyeliner and put her in a hairband. And yeah, she was suddenly very attractive to Emilio Estevez's character, and I can't remember his character name, but yeah, suddenly she was palatable to the boy in class. I don't know, I just felt really put out by it. Certainly when watching it as a teenager, and again, I watched it quite recently for the purposes of this film, and I still don't understand why this yeah, supposed character developments happens, because surely the overarching message should have been for teenagers to really embrace who they are. At number two, and this is again with spoilers, is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I know that people really love this movie, and in fact, my partner really, really loves this movie. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm on my own with this one, but I've got just such an issue with this film. And it's essentially around the character of Sharon Tate, and this is played by Margot Robbie. And don't get me wrong, I think Margot Robbie did a really good job in this film, and I can appreciate the aesthetics and overall production of this film because it is a quality film. But my issue with this film, and why I found it completely confusing, is why Tarantino made the decision to, I don't know, rewrite history and take away Sharon Tate's story from all of this. So, of course, we know that Sharon Tate was killed by the Manson family, and she was pregnant at the time. And I have no idea why they chose to gloss over this awful history, and I just felt deeply, deeply uncomfortable with this film. And I was actually really looking forward to it because I do like Tarantino's movies, and in fact there is another one that's going to appear in this list a little later on. I think the crux of it is, for me, I feel really uncomfortable when a true story is subverted in such a way that it's completely unrecognisable from what actually happens. And I'm fully aware that filmmakers have to make stories more interesting, so stories are often based on truth. But when a story like this is so far removed from the truth, I don't know, I just feel really uncomfortable with it. At number three, and I guess it is with spoilers, and this is 28 Days Later. And in fact, it's the whole 28 Days franchise, really. And yes, it's about fast zombies. I just can't get on board with it. I just find it really difficult when something that is so intrinsic to a specific genre is, I don't know, subverted in such a way that it's completely different to what we know and love about specific kind of subgenres, really, such as zombie movies. And I guess you may well say it's not a zombie film, but for me, it's a zombie film, and it just feels kind of too far removed. And where are they getting all of this energy from as a result of this virus? I just don't get it. And I find it really difficult to fully absorb myself in a story if there's a fundamental element that I just can't get on with, really. It's like I just can't get past this wall. And it's frustrating because I know that these are good quality films and there is a new one coming out soon, but yeah, it's one that I just can't get on board with at all, really. At number 4 is Fargo, and I'm talking about the original Fargo, so that's the film from the 90s. And I remember really enjoying this film at the time, but my issue with this film is that at the very beginning of the story, we're told that this is all a true story, and I was just in absolute shock at the events of this film. And I have to say, I can't even remember them now because I've only ever seen this film once. And it is because the filmmakers lied to us. It's not a true story, and I felt really confused as to why they made the decision to tell the viewer that this was all based in facts. And I just felt I'd been cheated once I found out that this, wasn't in fact a true story. It was just, I don't know, some kind of device perhaps for us to, as a viewer, just get completely lost in this story because we believe it to be truth, but it wasn't truth. And I just felt kind of, confused, angry, frustrated about it. And as a result, I've never been able to watch the film since. I've just got, just such a thing about, I guess, being lied to by filmmakers when, they tell us that a story is true. At number 5, and this is again with spoilers, is The Day of the Jackal. And I'm talking mainly about the TV show that came out fairly recently on Sky or Now or whatever. But I'm kind of also talking about the original film as well. So, of course, in the original, the character of the jackal was played by Edward Fox, and more recently as Eddie Redmayne. And they both did amazing, amazing jobs at this character in their own ways. However, I've just got a real issue around the character of the jackal, and I guess more so in the TV series, because from my understanding, the jackal should be almost like a human equivalent of the Terminator. So he is a guy on a mission, and he is essentially commissioned to be a hit guy. But what I don't understand is why they decided in the series to give this character a family, because I just don't think it works. It feels like such a flaw in the storytelling to me. And I'd love to know if you feel the same. I just don't understand why they added in a family for a character who's always got to be on alert, 24/7. He needs to be watching out for adversaries, and a family is only going to make him vulnerable and his family vulnerable. So I don't now understand why they added this in. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in season 2. I think it has been commissioned for a second series, and I'm really looking forward to it because there was so much I enjoyed about the first season, not least the cinematography, and their use of fonts actually was just beautiful. But yeah, I'll be interested to see how it plays out in season 2. At number 6, and again with spoilers, is The Shining. And I'm talking about Kubrick's version here, which is the iconic version, really. It's so good, and there is so much that I love about this film, and it really deserves all the praise that it gets as a classic horror movie. But I've got such an issue with one part of this film, and for me it kind of detracts from everything else because it almost cheapens the film, I think, and it is Jack Torrance's face at the end where he's kind of frozen in snow. It is so utterly ridiculous that I can't think about anything else when it comes to this film, because I always think, why did they put this frame or this scene in the movie, because it just looks so ridiculous. And of course Kubrick was so well known for all of his tiny details and nuances in his films, and he was a really tough director to work with, but I just don't understand why this went in, because it's just so laughable when so much else in this film seems so very serious in tone. I just don't get it, and it still confuses me as to why this is essentially the end of Jack Torrance. It's, for me, it just cheapens the rest of the film, and I'd love to know if you feel similarly about this, or if you, I don't know, think it was a really good way to end the film. Perhaps you feel it was quite sort of unique and it was nice to kind of instill maybe a bit of humour, but I don't know, for me it just didn't work. At number 7 is A Simple Favour, and this is again with spoilers, but yeah, this film is quite the ride to watch, really. I felt really discombobulated by it, and I am talking about the original film because I am aware that there is a sequel that's come out on Prime recently, which I've still to see. But A Simple Favour is just such a confuser of a film, and for me it's almost like it doesn't know what it's supposed to be, because it seems to jump genre and I can't seem to concentrate on it at all, because it just, yeah, jumps from kind of one plot line to another. And I do have some notes here. So the film starts off with a character called Stephanie, who is a kind of mummy vlogger. The story just kind of centres around her at first, and we're then introduced to Emily. But before long, it goes into a kind of Mean Girls kind of vibe, maybe a bit of Clueless. The film then goes into like a murder mystery, and then there's a whole Gone Girl vibe for a bit, and it all ends up like Scooby-Doo, basically. So for me, it feels like it's one transition after another transition after another, and of course, as an autistic person, I struggle with transitions, as do many autistic people. So I just felt that everything was just moving too fast, and I couldn't settle on whatever this film was supposed to be, because it just seemed to be jumping off at sort of tangents. It almost felt like a choose your own adventure book, and I don't know if you remember these books, they were big in the 80s, but essentially once you got to the end of a chapter you could then choose another chapter, so you'd make your own narratives, and it felt like that, only with each kind of end of the chapter you jump to a whole different book, let alone the same book. It was yeah, just really confusing. I just felt that it was too much for my autistic brain to cope with. At number 8, and again with spoilers, is Death Proof. And firstly, I absolutely love this film, and I've seen it endless times, and it's certainly my favourite Tarantino film. I just love the aesthetic and really cool vibes. And the film centres around, I guess, two groups of women and a stuntman called Mike. And essentially, the stuntman Mike character gets into a car crash on purpose with the first group of women, so that's essentially the first half of the film. And he then sets his eyes on another group of women who he again wants to get into a car crash or kill. However, the second group of women are able to get to him first, basically. But what frustrates me about this kind of scenario is that if I'm really rooting for a character and they're able to fend off or attack or kill whomever is after them at the end of the film, I then really worry as to what's going to happen to them with regard to the law. The police are going to find out what's happened. This guy has been killed, and they're going to come after these women, and they're going to go to jail. And it's something that I find really, really stressful in films. And the amount of times I've watched the film to the end and have not been able to shake off the feeling of the good guy being in trouble at the end of the film. And this can stay with me for a few days, and it just really bothers my brain for some reason. I just can't let it go because I'm left wondering what happens to these characters. Are they okay? This doesn't seem fair that, they did something that was essentially out of their control. They were trying to look after themselves and stay alive, and yet they could be in trouble for this if the law catches up with them. And there are no end of films like this. I think Nobody also comes to mind with Bob Odenkirk. And I would love to know if you feel similarly about these kinds of films where the good guy has essentially had to do something awful in order to stay alive. And yeah, whether it really bothers you too, or whether that actually you can shrug off these endings and, once you've seen the film, that's it. You don't really consider these characters anymore. It'd be really interesting to hear. At number 9 is Labyrinth. And to be honest, I could include a few other films in with this, and they would be maybe Willow, there'd maybe be The Dark Crystal, Pan's Labyrinth maybe as well. It's essentially fantasy movies, and I don't know what it is about them and whether I've just got a stumbling block on them because of my, I don't know, rigid thinking as an autistic person, but I find these worlds just so hard to believe in or invest in as a viewer. I just find it really hard to watch these stories. I just find that these kinds of universes require the viewer to suspend a lot of their disbelief, and it's just not something I've been able to do. And I am deeply envious of people that love these kinds of movies, because I know that many people get a lot out of them. And I know that Labyrinth in particular is loved by so many people, but I just really struggle with them, and I find myself dissociating if I do watch them. So, I've just got to the point where I've no clue as to what's going on because I've just not felt fully invested in them. And yeah, I'd love to know if there's any of you out there that feel similarly around fantasy films or other genres, actually. It doesn't have to be fantasy films, because I've also got a bit of a stumbling block on westerns as well. But yeah, let me know down in comments. At number 10, it is soap operas or soaps, whatever you want to call them. But I don't know, I find these kinds of things just really, yeah, difficult to understand why people want to watch them, really. For me, I feel like if I'm watching a drama or a story, there's something in me that wants to know that this story was fully created or fully rounded as a story before it was put out there, really. It's almost like I need to know that there's a good beginning, middle, and end to a story that I'm about to invest myself in. And if this is going on for years and years and years, I don't know, I find it really difficult. And It's not to say that I've never watched soaps, because my mum watched soaps when I was small, and I did continue watching them for a few years, but it did get to the point where I was thinking, I don't even know why I'm watching these, because I don't get really any enjoyment out of them, and they're often not very well constructed in terms of storylines or character developments. And yeah, it didn't take me long to, just stop watching them really. I think probably in my early 20s, but every now and again I will watch an episode of maybe EastEnders here in the UK, because there was a live episode quite recently, I think for some kind of anniversary of the show and when it was created. But I don't know, Ian and I watched it and we were both looking at each other like, what on earth is this? It just made me realise the amount of time I get from not watching soap operas, really. I just, yeah, really struggle with them. And I don't understand why people will invest, I don't know, years, decades in watching them when there's no sort of clear ending to them, is the best way that I can describe it, really. So there we have it. There's 10 more moments in TV and film that have confused or frustrated my autistic brain, and I would love to know if you can relate to the examples I've given today, or if you can't. But more interestingly, I would love to know the moments in TV and film that have left you confused, frustrated, annoyed, because it's just fascinating to hear. So let me know down in comments. So I think that's going to be it for today. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.